Managing conflict and negotiating. What is conflict? Conflict is a disagreement that arises when two or more parties perceive a threat to their interests, needs, or concerns. Dysfunctional conflict focuses on emotions and differences between two parties. Constructive conflicts balance the interests of both parties to maximize mutual gains and the attainment of mutual goals. Here we see some common causes of conflict: differing task goals, differing process goals, interpersonal differences, resource constraints, change, differing values, poor communication, task interdependence, or organizational structure. Next, we have the 9-stage model of conflict escalation. Hardening is when each side's opinion hardens and the two opponents adopt a collision course. Debate is when each actions over words sees a decrease in empathy for the opponent, and the idea that talking no longer helps emerges. Imaging and coalitions are when negative rumors are spread and stereotypes are formed as each side prepares for a fight and conducts a search for supporters. Loss of face marks the beginning of open and direct aggression intended to cause the opponent's loss of public face. Threat as a strategy are threats and counter-threats increase. Limited attempts to overthrow is when the opponent is no longer viewed as a person. Slight personal damage is considered acceptable at this point. Fragmentation of the enemy is when the goal becomes the destruction and dissolution of the system. And then together into the abyss sees the descendant into total confrontation with no way to turn back. Here we see a few ways of de-escalating the conflict. Be an empathetic listener. Focus your attention on the other person. Use delay tactics to create time to diffuse your emotions. Control your body language. Remind both parties that a win-win solution can be found. And stay focused on issues, not emotions. Moving along, we have the interpersonal conflict management strategies. The first one is collaborating, and that reflects a high concern for your own interests and a high concern for the interest of your other party as well. Compromising is when each side sacrifices something in order to end the conflict. Competing results from a high concern for your own interest and a low concern for the other party. Accommodating is a low concern for your own interest and a high concern for the interest of your other party. Listening is an important conflict management skill. Listening includes eye contact, rephrasing, and summarizing what each side tells you to show them that you understand each side's opinion. Questioning and communicating nonverbally are also very important conflict management skills. Mediating is when you ask open rather than leading questions and use nonverbal cues to show that you are sincerely trying to help both parties. The following are the best conflict resolution behaviors, including perspective taking, creating solutions, expressing emotions, reaching out, and documenting areas of agreement and disagreement. There are also others, but these are just a few of some of the most important ones. Here we have some of the worst conflict resolution behaviors. Avoid the conflict, winning at all costs, displaying anger, demeaning the other party, and retaliating. These things you do not want to do when you're trying to resolve a conflict. The negotiation process is when two or more parties make offers, counter-offers, and concessions in order to reach an agreement. There are two types of negotiation. Distributive negotiation is any gain to one party is offset by an equivalent loss to the other party. Integrative negotiation is a win-win negotiation in which the agreement involves no loss to either party. Here we have the fundamental principles of integrative negotiation. The first is separate people from the problem. Here, you want to separate relationship issues from substantive issues and deal with them independently. Next, you want to focus on interests, not positions, negotiating about things that people really want and need and not what they say they want or need. Next, you want to invent options for mutual gain, looking for new solutions to the problem that will allow both parties to win. Last, you want to insist on objective fairness criteria, looking outside. Objective fairness criteria for the negotiated agreement are ideal if they exist. Here, we're going to talk about the how-to on being an effective negotiator. The first thing you'll want to know is negotiating is about compromise. Next, you'll need to know to suppress your emotions. Third, you'll always want to identify and use sources of leverage. Lastly, we have BATNA, which stands for the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Here we have the alternative dispute resolution. This is when parties are unable to agree, and then they bring in a third party to overcome the stalemate to avoid a trial. There are 3 types of alternative dispute resolution. Conciliation is when the third party builds positive relationships between the 2 parties, improves their communication, and facilitates their discussion. Conciliation is most often the first step in alternative dispute resolution. Its goal is to get the parties to better communicate and resolve problems of their own. Mediation is when the mediator suggests a settlement that does not have to be accepted. If the mediator is not perceived as neutral, they are not likely to be effective. This is a voluntary and non-binding. Last is arbitration. This is when the third party that has authority to impose a settlement on both parties. This always results in a settlement, but also leaves greater room for one or more party to be dissatisfied.